Today we're going to look at the Tariff Module by WilloWare for Microsoft Dynamics GP. The purpose of the module is to calculate pass-through tariff. This is for the situation where your vendor is adding a surcharge to their invoices to cover or partially cover a tariff. It does not apply to a situation where the tariff is added into the cost of the material that you're purchasing. In that case, it is simply just more expensive, and that will flow through to manufacturing or sales. With appropriate setup, you can have GP track the accrued tariff expense and the applied tariff revenue at the general ledger. So this is a high-level overview of the process flow when using the WilloWare tariff module. We begin on the left where we've received a PO invoice that has a $200 tariff or other surcharge on the document, and the regular purchase price of the inventory is $1,000. The inventory goes into inventory like it normally does at $1,000. The $200 surcharge is tracked at the general ledger as a accrued tariff expense. And when we get to the sales side of the transaction, the WilloWare tariff module will calculate the amount of tariff that should be applied to that item, add it back into the sales transaction, which then allows us to track a applied tariff revenue. Using this method helps separate these highly variable costs from our normal inventory, management processes. There are a few different ways of setting up and using the WilloWare tariff module. We are just going to look at the detailed method today. The global method allows setting up a high-level, across-the-board tariff that gets applied to every transaction. Detailed is item-specific tariff calculations. And then lastly, there's a custom method that we'll take a quick look at the end. There's a few different methods for how to calculate a tariff. There's percent of value, which is the cost of the item, so the actual cost or the standard cost. There's a specific dollar per unit weight, which we'll look at how this is calculated. It's actually just a specific dollar amount. And then there's a few different ways of how you can tweak the calculation to work for you. And lastly, percent of extended price. The module has a few different ways that it can add the tariff onto the sales transaction. It can add the total amount into the miscellaneous charge field, or it can add it into the sales lines, into the scrolling window on sales transaction entry. When it adds it into the sales lines, it could either do it as a total amount, so total amount of tariff for all of the lines on the document, or it can do a tariff line per sales line, or it can do a tariff line per sales line with tariff detail. And we'll take a look at these in the demo of what this looks like. Just a quick note on the setup. So either on the tariff item setup or sales posting setup, you can set either the sales account or the miscellaneous charge account to be a applied tariff revenue account. And then posting will make those tariff revenues flow through to general ledger. The module can also calculate tariff on assemblies. So if you use the GP manufacturing bill of materials or the assembly bill of materials or kits, the module can look through the entire exploded bill of materials or the entire component list on a kit, calculate the amount of tariff on each item within the assembly, and roll that up to calculate a total amount of tariff due on the finished good. For example, with GP manufacturing, if you're selling 100 XLG, the tariff calculation will blow through the entire exploded bill of materials, find all the purchase items in there, look up the tariff codes assigned to those items, calculate the amount of tariff on those items, and roll that all the way up to the top. Okay, so let's jump into GP and take a look at this in action. So let's start by taking a look at some of the setup of the tariff module. The module can be enabled or disabled from within the company database. The installation itself allows you to choose which company it is installed into, so it doesn't have to be installed into every company or enabled or available within that company. So that's part of the installation process. Once the software is installed, you can turn it on and off. So this allows you to do all the setup necessary without actually activating it in sales transaction entry. These are the different scopes that the software can be used in. So we're going to just look at the detailed scope today, and then a quick mention of how the custom scope functions. As we already discussed, it can be added to the miscellaneous charge field, or there are several different options for how to add it into the sales lines. If you use assemblies, you can choose whether or not it's calculated for any or all of these. The rounding calculation does what it says. It just this affects how the calculation is performed and whether or not it rounds it to certain decimal places. This is where the tariff item is set up. The tariff should be a miscellaneous charge, service, or a flat fee. You can set the sales account to be an applied tariff revenue account so that posting the sales invoice then makes the tariff revenue flow through to general ledger. You can set up country of origin codes and assign a country of origin to items. This doesn't actually impact the tariff calculation because the tariff calculation is done based on a tariff code that is assigned to an item. However, the country of origin does show up on reports, so you might want to set that up in here. So this is where the real action happens in the tariff module. And I'm just going to delete a couple of these because we'll take a look in a second of adding some tariff codes back into the window. But the tariff code, this is either just a user-defined ID, so like a item number or customer number or vendor ID, or in this case, it's actually an HTS code. And when you use an HTS code, the software will jump out to the government website and pull the information for that HTS code from the website back into GP. And where possible, it'll grab the tariff percent and that shows up down in here. It doesn't automatically go get this and it doesn't automatically refresh. So once you get it or set it up, it sticks to what it is. But at any time, you can refresh this information. So you might have noticed the paste button on here. And there's a paste button on all of our setup windows. So there's a paste button over here on item country, on item tariff code maintenance, on the customer exclusions, and they all function in the same way. So you can get all this information set up in a spreadsheet and import it into the software by just copying it from the spreadsheet and pasting into the window. So I was deleting things earlier, and we deleted MX and this 10.00.10 and CN. And if we hit the lookup button, you can see that those aren't in here. So we copied those from Excel, click the paste button, it says done. And now you can see we've added these in here. So the tariff code can be anything. You can define the ID itself how you want or the calculations. And the different calculation methods, as we talked about before, there's percent of value and extended price. And then there's also a specific amount. And we'll look at how the specific amount works in just a second. So tariff codes are assigned to an item, and you can have an unlimited number of tariff codes assigned to each item. So there are situations where there are layers of tariffs, and this allows you to manage that. So the specific amount calculation, the way this works, we could say that the specific amount is it's $5 per one of the item's base unit of measure. So if this thing weighs 1 pound, this would be $5. So it can actually be set up based on the amount of material in an item. For example, this could be a tariff based on the weight of aluminum or steel in the item. And this could be defined as, and maybe it's $5 per kilogram, and we say that this is 0.03 kilograms, in which case it'll take 0.03 of $5 as the tariff for this item. But another way to do this is just to say that, well, we want to set up a tariff code that assigns a specific dollar amount to an item. So you could set it up to say it's $1 per one of the item. And then on the item, you specify what the dollar amount would be. So in this case, this calculation would result in assigning $2 of fixed tariff to this item. Okay, so next let's jump into sales transaction entry and take a look at how this works. So we have a sales transaction with a couple of items on it. We've just entered this and we want to add the tariff to it. Now back in setup, we have the setup, we have the tariff module set up to do one tariff item per sales line with tariff detail. And we'll print the sales order report in just a second because it's a little bit easier to see on there. But what it's doing is it's using the sales line comment field. And the sales line comment gives you 4 50-character lines of text print um, that print below each sales item. So in this case, this tariff line can have 4 tariff details that print below it. So we'll take a look at that here. And by the way, it shows up on the Word template too, because it's on the document. So once it's on the document, it shows up no matter how you're printing it. So here's the tariff line. Here's a couple of tariff details. Here's another tariff line and a couple of details. So that's the tariff line per sales line with detail. If we just did a tariff line per sales line without the detail, it would just be these highlighted lines and these additional details wouldn't print. And then we can also do a single tariff line for the entire document. So let's just jump over there real quick and change how this is set up. So we're gonna do a sales line as total. So we'll bring this back up and recalculate the tariff. And now you can see it's just on a single tariff line. And it can also add it in as the miscellaneous charge down here. So when it does the calculation, there are a couple additional sales line detail tables where it's storing this information. So it's doing the calculation per sales line, regardless of how you have it adding it onto the document. And then it knows how it did that calculation. So it's a bit like a tax calculation. It knows what the rates were today when it does the calculation, and that information follows the document. So if you transfer an order to invoice or order to back order, that original calculation stays with the document. So if you have an environment where there's a high rate of change in the tariffs or the surcharges, it remembers what it was today. And then if you change it tomorrow, that doesn't affect the documents that are already in the system unless you go up and force a recalculation. One thing I should mention with the tariff calculation too is it works on either sales transaction entry or on a sales batch. So it can calculate the tariff and add the tariff lines in to every document in the batch. I just wanted to touch quickly on the custom calculation method. This uses a empty stored procedure that's created by the installation process. By default, it has no logic in it. And as you can see, the tariff just returns zero. You can edit this to do whatever type of calculation you want. So you can add a custom tariff or a custom surcharge calculation onto any document. So that's it for the WilloWare tariff module. If you have any questions about it, we'd be happy to answer them. Please jump out to willowware.com, click on the help button and send us a message, and we will get right back to you.